Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole because we like to go into topics more deeply. I have the great honor to have with me Ross Jackson. When I was in the island of Cyprus, and my husband at the time, Vincenzo Santilli, and I were trying to start an eco-village, Ross Jackson was a very, very famous name to all of us in the eco-village community, because at that time the United Nations was meeting in Istanbul, and you were the only one that we felt was speaking for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, now that your book's coming out, Radical Economic and Political Reform, that you might talk about what happened in Istanbul and then bring us up to date here, and then how it relates to your book, because I know you've written many.
Yeah, well, Istanbul was the year where we launched the Global Eco-Village Network. And our hope at that time was that we could actually get some financing from the United Nations. And we had a very big presence at the Habitat conference there. In fact, it was so big that we were actually invited by the official conference to address the official conference. And we did that, and we asked them for their support. But it turned out afterwards we found that actually the United Nations doesn't have any money. They said, oh, well, you're going to have to find it elsewhere, perhaps individual governments and so forth.
How can it not have any money? You've always got the peacekeeping missions coming out. Surely somebody's paying.
Yeah, that's what
soldiers.
we thought too. But I mean, that was what they said in any case. So the end result was that we had to end up financing it ourselves. And since that time, Gaia Trust, my foundation, has been the only really source of funding for the eco-village movement. And we continue to this day. So, but this book is really a slightly different book than the eco-village movement. This is more looking at things more globally and saying what is wrong with the global economic and political system that is driving us towards an unsustainable future. And is there anything we can do about that to change this dysfunctional game? Because right now, I would say the system is broken. I mean, ecologically, economically, and socially, it's just going absolutely the wrong way. It's only benefiting a very small minority, what the Occupy movement calls the 1%, and all the non-profit seeking parts of society, in particular the environment, but also working people, the communities, the developing countries are all paying the costs.
The reason I found a similarity with your work with the eco-village movement was you were talking about, like say in Malaysia, where they were going against the neoliberal feeling that you couldn't lock down the currency, but they did. They kept their currency pegged, I think it was 3.8.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And they proved them wrong. But it was because they had the courage to take the risk to be isolated. Am I not right?
That's right. I mean,
to say that?
Yes, what you're referring to is this period in the late 1990s where a number of the Western countries tried to destroy a number of economies in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. Later it spread to Taiwan, South Korea. And Malaysia was the only country that actually stood up to them and introduced controls on capital flows.
Right.
And a number of studies later showed that they came out of it much better than those countries which did not have capital controls. Right. And that's one of the points I'm making in my book, that controls on capital flow are absolutely essential for developing countries and smaller industrialized countries, because their markets cannot stand that enormous amount of hot money that's coming from these enormous hedge funds and Western banks.
Right. I really liked how you explained all of those things. I mean, I'd highly recommend this book just as almost as a primer for somebody who doesn't know about credit swaps and derivatives and things.
One thing I would mention in this connection is that I believe there is a shift occurring in terms of our worldview, getting away from the idea that we're separate from nature to the what I call in the book the Gaian paradigm, a worldview in which we recognize that we are part of nature. It's very much in line with the indigenous peoples philosophy, and it's gradually taking hold. And I think one of the reasons that we're in such difficulty in terms of the global economic and political situation is that we're still thinking of ourselves as separate from nature and looking upon resources as something to be exploited. And I think if we're going to shift into a different kind of global economical and political situation, we're going to have some combination of support from below, from these grassroots that are challenging the current structures, as you're doing. But it's very difficult because the 1%, if you like, as a metaphor, is actually in charge now of almost all sectors in the American economy, including Congress, which means that it's very, very difficult to change anything through the normal legal framework. And that's why
but legal and lawful, but go on.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying that I don't think civil society alone is strong enough to create the change that's needed. And that's why I'm suggesting that perhaps the initiative could come from a different group on the global scene, namely some of the smaller independent countries that could get together and say, look, we think that we have to put forward an alternative to this system, a model which could actually work for everyone and which respects the idea of this new Gaian paradigm, which puts sustainability and human rights at the very top.
Thank you, Ross.
Nice to be here.
Yes, great. Thank you.